Hello, I think now we are ready to start our meeting, and I would like now to recall for those who are in the room, make sure that if you that you have your interpretation devices with you, and then as you may have noticed, channel 1 is English, channel 2 is Russian, and channel 3 is Ukrainian. So this is certainly an important for our guests online. Please use the button, interpretation button, that you'll see at the bottom of your Zoom screen, that you can select between the languages. And certainly, if you have any questions, please send us in a chat and we'll be happy to answer. But otherwise, I think I'm very pleased to now invite Mathilde Mesnard, who is the Deputy Director of the Environment Directorate of the OECD, to open the meeting and then to manage the first session. Mathilde.
Thank you, Christophe. Very good morning to all of you. You in the room and those who are joining us virtually. It's a great pleasure for me to open this conference on financing the green and net zero transition in EU Eastern Partnership countries and Central Asia. This is a very important topic in a very important region. So I'm very pleased really to be here with you. So this conference is part of consistent efforts on the part of the European Union and other donors, such as Germany, to support EU Eastern Partnership and Central Asia countries to move their economies towards a greener and low carbon path of economic development. Projects like EU for Environment play an important role in catalyzing such efforts, providing practical support and shedding light on what needs to be done better or what needs to be done more, and how to mobilize investment that can support this shift to a net zero economy. So to further this objective, the conference will take stock first of the policy developments, the initiatives and the financial vehicles in the EU partnership countries in Central Asia that have been already implemented or that are being implemented to shift towards a greener and net zero transition, and learn from experiences of mobilizing public and private finance for such investments. The other objective will be to highlight the key challenges and the ways forward to better align financial mechanisms with policy reforms, to speed up and to scale up, because we really need to scale up, speed up the green investments, in particular in this post-COVID environment and in this context of the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine. So the idea also will be to identify new topics that may emerge from the agenda of the 2 days for further advancement of green and net zero policy reforms in your countries. Yeah. So we have 1.5 days, and we will cover other important topics such as reviewing the government's commitments to green and net zero investments and look in the magnitude of the financing needs. We will also discuss the role of financial capital markets in raising long-term finance for green investment. We will review major international initiatives for closing this green investment gap. And we will also review the use of public finance and government regulations and their use to leverage private resources. So we have a very broad and diverse audience with us today. Of course, we have a representative of ministries of environment, economy, finance, and energy from the countries, from Eastern Partnership and Central Asia countries. So a very warm welcome to you all. We have also representatives of international finance institutions and financing facilities, international organizations and donor countries. And last but not least, we have also experts from commercial banks and other financial institutions, from academia, from the NGO sector and consultancies. So I hope that with this diverse audience, we'll have a diversity of opinions and definitely a good debate. And I engage you to be quite open about your ideas and make your points. So before handing the floor to our colleague from the EU, I would like to say a few words on behalf of the OECD. So we are aware, of course, of the magnitude of the climate and environmental challenge and also of its urgency. And we try to look always at this, what we call the triple crisis, not only the climate one, but climate, biodiversity, pollution. We need to look at it in a systemic way and all together. And of course, we see increasing demands to mobilize the finance needed to address these challenges. And this is often where the negotiations are becoming difficult, including at the UNCCC level. There is a clear need for increased level of public finance, but even more to make sure that this public finance is mobilizing enough private sector finance. And we have also finance from the international sources and from the non-profit sector. Your countries, I mean, in the Eastern Partnership and Central Asia, have recognized the scale of the investment needs for your green transition, and more, you have the technical means to estimate these needs. And some countries, such as Armenia, Moldova, and Kyrgyzstan, have developed national roadmaps, policy frameworks, or voluntary principles on sustainable finance as part of your development strategies. And in recent years, countries such as Armenia, Georgia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Ukraine, Uzbekistan have also begun to align their policy directions on financial sector development with national goals on green economy transition and climate action. So the role of finance and economic ministers, the role of central banks and financial regulators in promoting sustainable finance are increasingly recognized. And let me give you just one example in Georgia with the National Bank of Georgia that has adopted its sustainable finance framework, including a roadmap for sustainable finance with very specific action points. So there has been clearly an increased awareness of the importance of better using scarce public funding to mobilize private sector investments to support green growth. And I say scarce because there is not enough of it, including from developed countries towards developing countries. You know that we are doing the monitoring of that and we have not yet reached the $100 billion goal. So that's a beginning that is a little bit too low. So many countries in the region have begun introducing medium-term budgeting processes and have begun also to design public environmental investment programs. We have seen some very interesting developments, for example, once again, in Armenia, in Georgia, in Moldova or Ukraine, to strengthen or to set up new domestic financial institutions that provide finance for green investment. They also attract international and private finance. I refer here to so-called environmental funds that are generally capitalized by national budgets and environmental taxes and charges, but that are also supported by development cooperation partners. Several countries have also started analyzing the extent of use and environmentally damaging fossil fuel subsidies. So that's the first step towards maybe, hopefully, reforming these subsidies. And while capital markets in Eastern Partnership and Central Asian countries are not yet contributing significantly to financing the green investments that we need, green bonds show signs of becoming an asset class in their own right. Kazakhstan was the first country in the region to issue a green bond, but now Armenia, Georgia, Ukraine have followed, and each of these countries have issued 2 of them in the last 2 years or so. And now we have seen, and altogether this amounted to $2 billion. So it's no more insignificant. And most recently, in August this year, I think, yeah, a bank in Uzbekistan has issued a green bond as well. And finally, a number of local commercial banks, this time, as well as non-bank financial institutions and associations of financial institutions in the region have joined the effort to increase green lending. However, in spite of all these promising developments, we all know that important challenges still exist. And this is inter alia related to the still unfinished business of what we call the enabling policy and regulatory framework. It has to do also with the better management of public money and the scaling up of instruments that can mobilize private money. And last but not least, also the issue of having enough attractive and well-prepared project pipelines. At the OECD, we have been working with the EU and with partner countries to address some of these barriers to upscale green finance. We have developed a range of specific tools. We have helped with the reform of policies and operations, as well as with analysis of potentials for better use of capital markets. And several examples of this work will be presented during the 2 days ahead. So I'm very pleased that we have worked in close collaboration with the European Union and with its member states. I really commend our partner countries, so all of you from the region, for progress so far, and I look forward to further cooperation with you. I also wish to thank our implementing partners from UNICE, UNEP, and UNIDO, as well as the World Bank for the close cooperation we've had with them. And I do believe that this conference will show the good results of this cooperation and will give us further directions for the future of our work. So now, before I would like to hand the floor to Mr. Lawrence Meredith, Director of the EU Eastern Neighbourhood and Institution Building at the European Commission, for a keynote speech. Your role, Mr. Meredith, is and support to our cooperation is very much appreciated. The EU and its member states are actively supporting the greening of the economies in both the Eastern Partnership countries and Central Asia. And this includes policy dialogue, technical support, facilitation of green investments. So apart from the EU for Environment program that this conference and related work are part of, other relevant projects in the Eastern Partnership countries and Central Asia supported by the EU include, among others, EU for Climate and EU for Energy. So I let you tell us all about them, maybe. You have the floor.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Mathilde. A pleasure to be with you on this platform this morning. I have, first of all, my sincere apologies for being a fraction late. Despite my commitment to sustainable transport, I ended up in a very green bus for far longer than I'd planned due to a rather heavily polluting lorry that was blocking everything. So it was not a lack of planning. It was just bad luck this morning, but I'm sorry the bad luck affected all of you, not just me. Thank you for your patience. You will have heard President von der Leyen's State of the Union speech last week, and she leads off on the European Green Deal because she's put this at the center of her mandate. She's done 4 years. She describes the European Union together with our partners like the OECD, and of course, most importantly, with partners from the Eastern Partnership and Central Asia. She talks of it as answering the call of history. And as we've seen the hottest summer on record in Europe, there's been some stark reminders of how devastating the climate can be to our livelihoods if we don't address it more urgently than we've managed to do so far. So I'm very proud to work for an EU which has been the first to put a commitment to having Europe, and this is very much the right choice of phrase. This is not the European Union, this is Europe to be the first climate neutral continent by 2050. But for that to be achieved, it needs all our partners in the Eastern Partnership, but also in Central Asia, because the climate doesn't stop at international borders, as we all know. So I'm delighted that we start this 2-day workshop together. I'm delighted that we have our friends from the region with us. That's the most important part of this, but also our friends from the international financing institutions, because we can only deliver this together. And I think she's been extremely clear. In fact, she gave a very robust answer to any who doubted whether the EU would hold the course. She said, we will stay the course, we remain ambitious, and we stick to our commitments. And I think it's extremely important that those of us who are active in this partnership really raise our game to deliver even more. Mathilde was very eloquent on the fact that, yes, we're doing a lot, but there's really an awful lot more that needs to be done. And that includes in particular on the financing side of this. So I'm pleased to have this opportunity to share a few thoughts with you this morning. And in terms of the Eastern Partnership in Central Asia, this is going to be very much delivered through the Global Gateway, through the Economic and Investment Plan, which is a commitment both with our partners from the region, but also our international financing partners, and where we hope to narrow the global investment gap in infrastructure by raising up to 135 billion euros of investments. These numbers are often eye-watering, but I think so is the climate devastation, unfortunately. So it's, I think, understandable that the very substantial investments need to be channeled into ever greener commitments. And in the Eastern Partnership region, we're promoting this twin transition, both green but also digital. And we expect to leverage up to 17 billion euros over the coming 5 years or so. And since we launched that a couple of years ago, we've already mobilized nearly 7 billion euros worth of investments, and 4 billion of those are dedicated to sustainable transport, clean energy, and greener businesses. And I mean, we're all conscious of the devastating war in Ukraine following Russia's brutal and illegal invasion. And as you may know, a dedicated 50 billion euro Ukraine facility is now being set up. And at the heart of that, the reconstruction of Ukraine, when we will be able to begin it in earnest, needs to be green. And we're also supporting, of course, the green transformation of Central Asia through a Team Europe approach. And I think here, that's what I expect to get out of the next couple of days. Two things, really. One is looking at innovative ways of mobilizing finance, because the finance world, as ever, is moving extremely quickly. And secondly, I think we can take to the next level our partnerships with the OECD, with other major international financing institutions, and crucially with the private sector. Earlier this year, we have a new Director General, Gert-Jan Koopman, who's come from an economics background, and I know that he's personally very committed to stepping up our engagement with the international financing partners. Actually, later this week, we'll have a very major conference looking at all the regions, not just the East and Central Asia, but also the Southern Neighbourhood, the Western Balkans, and discussing how we can do this. But it's the engagement with the private sector has to be crucial. And it's for that reason that we established the European Fund for Sustainable Development Plus. And the EFSD Plus will allow us to catalyze both public and private investments. And to do this, we either use blending to reduce the cost of borrowing with European Union grants, or we could also provide, and that's one of the novelties in it's not so new instrument now, but guarantees to reduce the investment risks. And later today, we'll deep dive on how all of this works. So to better steer the green investments, it's really important that we're clear on a sustainable finance agenda. So we've established criteria to determine which economic activities are best aligned with both environmental and climate goals. And so to enable that policy dialogue, we have the International Platform on Sustainable Finance. In June, together with several international partners, as Mathilde already referred to this, a global green bond initiative has been launched. And we think this is crucial because it can combine different types of measure to strengthen the green bond markets. So although we're going to talk a lot about financing, I would also like to draw the debate onto the necessary policy reforms and institution building, which we also believe are essential pillars to deliver on the European Green Deal. And I'm really proud that our regional EU for Environment program has been supporting the Eastern Partnership countries for a number of years. In fact, it was one of the very first events in which I participated when I took up this position nearly 8 years ago. So we've really kept green at the heart of our work. And we're committed to stepping up our work on green finance. That's why we aim to strengthen the enabling framework for green bonds with technical support from Mathilde and her team in the OECD, and also from our friends on the German side, the GIZ colleagues. And I think this partnership is going to be really essential. So I'm excited to have the opportunity to open this conference jointly with Mathilde and colleagues here. I'm really sure that you're going to get a lot out of it. And it's by, for much of the last 3 or 4 years, we were struggling to come together in person. So for me, it's still a new pleasure in 2023 to see such a huge room of people together without any fear or masks or any of this stuff. So the world moves fast. So if we can overcome a global pandemic, let's put similar energy and dedication into stepping up with equal vigor our work on the green financing. And if we can beat a global pandemic in 3 years, then surely we can do a lot more to tackle climate. Thank you very much.